Hello, everyone. Hello from the Netherlands. It's quite early morning now here. My presentation will be on blockchain innovation ecosystems and how open or closed they are. I think this connects nicely to the previous panel that I just attended, and we were discussing about trust and why the industry doesn't change. So I think my presentation will give a bit more background, a little more information on these topics. Um, so just a couple of things about me. Eleni Papadonikolaki. Originally, I was trained as an architect. I did my studies at TU Delft, and then I was a number of years at UCL London. I think that's still the affiliation in the program. Now my affiliation is changed back to TU Delft, where I'm associate professor in management of engineering projects and also head of section in integral design and management. So what I will be discussing today in the next for the next 20 minutes, perhaps even less, would be first about digital innovation more broadly. I'll provide some definitions for how I'm looking at this topic. And then, yeah, I will link this to blockchain eventually, the topic of our conference here, and explain the research setting under which I conducted this study. In the QR code, you can see the paper that I will be talking about. It was recently published in the Journal of Information Management and Data Systems with colleagues from UK and Sweden. So first, trying to talk a bit about construction, again, linking to the previous discussion. The sector has some very peculiar characteristics. It's organized around projects, and as we know, with projects, a lot of knowledge is lost after their end, and then we have to start a new project and develop new knowledge. So there is this fragmentation in learning on how to do things. And the industry is also very paper-based, very transactional. It has a lot of mistrust, a lot of different companies that work together, and it is also broken into numerous tiers. And also throughout the different project life cycle, throughout the project life cycle, we see a lot of different involvement from suppliers and other co-makers in the project. So this creates a lot of complexity in terms of the structure of the industry. And of course, when we talk about blockchain, we talk about blockchain also in conjunction with other digital technologies, right? And again, we know that construction is not doing very well on that either. For example, these graphics from McKinsey, it's at the lower bottom of digitalization, has a very low digitalization index. And although we're trying and we are experimenting with different technologies, still this thing is not evenly distributed across the sector. And then talking about blockchain, I think you've heard a lot of things in the past days, so I won't be going into any definitions about that. But I just want to show some application areas that are quite interesting for construction, that it's looking at use cases. So of course we know that there are applications, successful applications in the finance, not only about looking blockchain systems as a utility or a commodification, but also focusing on transactions. And as I mentioned before, construction is very transactional, and perhaps that's something that we could build on. Similarly, logistics and anything that has to do with complex supply chains, there are some successful examples as well in this sector. And again, this relates to better ownership, this relates to better traceability of assets, and also quality assurance. So these are also things that we are interested in construction supply chain, especially to understand how blockchain can support some of these applications. And then there are applications also of the healthcare, having to do more with interoperability of data. data integrity and management. So all these ideas are very interesting for us in blockchain, looking at how to digitize and revolutionize the industry. So moving to the rationale about this study, construction, as mentioned, is very project-based, very fragmented, very transaction-heavy, and it lacks trust. And blockchain has been touted as a transparent layer that can bring a lot of immutable transactions, and it's also called the industry of trust. So how could we use blockchain in our construction projects to instill a bit of trust, a bit of technological trust, if you like? And at the same time, the motivation for looking at this particular study that relates to open innovation was that blockchain development relates to a lot of open source developments, a lot of open source code that's already out there, a lot of community involvement, and it could potentially give us this link to the open innovation paradigm. Um, so what is open innovation? Here, I will briefly explain some of the principles of this theory. It's a relatively young theory, if you like, tested across many sectors. And the main idea is how essentially companies can open their firm boundaries, if you like, and tap into knowledge, expertise, research and development, ideas, IPs that come from different companies. So through this approach, essentially, companies recognize that they don't have to share to originate a research or an innovation, but they can profit from it, even if it comes from other companies. Similarly, this implies that there is a need for a different business model that would allow companies to be a bit more open rather than closed, as we're used to companies securing their innovations, they're creating patents, and not sharing their developments with other parts of their ecosystem. So the idea of this project was to see to what extent this theory was applicable to what we are experiencing in construction, especially construction ecosystems. Just a bit more literature, although I don't want to stay long in this in this chart. So based on these ideas and these theories, we can identify different types of innovation ecosystems. For example, we have closed innovation ecosystems, hybrid, and open, completely open. And the relations, how companies interact in these ecosystems, um, how the members relate, how they enter in these constellations, they vary from closed to open, of course. And hybrid is in the middle, that has some characteristics of the completely open and some characteristics of the completely closed innovation ecosystem. Membership is something that's important for all of these, but again, as mentioned, there's different ways that companies link to these ecosystems. And it's also interesting to look here at the end goals. The closed ecosystems, they have the closed ecosystems, they have more independent goals, individual goals, whereas the open ecosystems, they have more collective innovation goals. I think the blocks were different in the previous chart. The study was a qualitative study. And again, as the title implies, the main question was to understand how open or closed is the blockchain ecosystem innovation in construction, and who are the emerging orchestrators of this system. And it involved a lot of interviews across a global sample. People that were targeted, sampled for this study, were both technical experts, but also had a more senior role in companies, so they could bring us more close to the ideas of how leadership in construction companies is looking at this technology entering the space. And then we did a lot of thematic analysis and content analysis, presenting some of the results here. For example, you see at the left-hand side, this is the different principles of open innovation. For example, human resources, research and development, commercialization, business models, idea creation, and IP. And the next two columns to the right, they contain the quotations that we identified in these interviews we did with the 24 experts at the closed and the open innovation space. So with a quick look also at the totals here at the end, you see that most of our experts, they were talking about open innovation, right? So most of the things that they were saying about blockchain, about the potential, about things that they are doing in their companies, these came from the open innovation domain. However, it was very interesting also to see that some of these principles of open innovation were were equally being discussed as closed and open. What I mean by that, for example, we had mentioned that business models and business model innovation was something that companies had to take into account, but it wasn't clear of how to change their business models in order to support, let's say, an open innovation paradigm. For this reason, there were some interviewees, especially 9 here, that while talking about open innovation, they were essentially describing closed systems. The same with IP. When talking about open innovation, they were essentially talking a lot about protecting IP, a lot about not sharing data. And this created perhaps this idea for us that there are still some misunderstandings and that the industry is quite not yet there with regards to open innovation in construction. For example, those who were talking about open innovation, they could recognize that companies could buy knowledge and IP from external parties. But those who were talking more about the closed innovation system, they were talking about this lack of trust that we discussed and the lack of sharing data, and this continuous need to collaborate in a zero-sum game, to compete in a zero-sum game, if you like. Similarly, again, in the closed innovation type of quotations, what we learned was that most companies, they're not interested in the ecosystem, but they're interested more on how to commercialize blockchain for their own individual benefit, not so much about the collective goals, which, as we mentioned, the collective goals is what relates to open innovation. Therefore, the structure of the innovation ecosystems, as we said, it was a bit divided between the open and the other categories. Most of them, they were talking, of course, about open innovation ecosystems, about collective goals that could be orchestrated by consortia, large companies, or owners. But of course, there were other ideas about hybrid and closed systems that were meant to be orchestrated by other parts of the ecosystem. Could be software vendors, perhaps going to more closed ideas, contractors, and even new organizations formed to support hybrid goals that balance between open and closeness. So different innovation ecosystems, open or closed, they had different orchestrators as well. That was interesting. And this is also something that perhaps the industry can learn about how to, about what's coming essentially and how it needs to be self-organized. Additionally, we found that the role of SMEs, small medium enterprises, was more visible in open and hybrid formations rather than in closed systems. Equally, there was different type of support expected for different type of open or closed blockchain innovation ecosystems. And the role of the government and the policymakers was very important on them. But in open and hybrid systems, it was more about legitimization, legislation, providing a ground for consortia essentially to develop these open innovation ideas. Whereas when we were looking at the closed ecosystems, the discussions about policy were more, and government were more about how can the government help with upskilling people, with giving incentives, and with endorsing the technology. So essentially, companies were expecting a lot from private companies to develop this. And reaching towards the end of the presentation, what we found was from this study that construction sector is mostly organized around closed innovation. Of course, we talked about blockchain in particular, but this is something that in the past we've seen in other technologies as well, just building information modeling, and now a lot of discussions about digital twin. These traditional business models that companies seem to have, and they're not very keen to change. They don't allow for blockchain innovation and knowledge spillover. They don't allow for a lot of collaboration between the different partners. And blockchain initiatives, they can empower the small and medium companies, as we said, which make a big part of the construction structure. I think this is a more democratic way also for getting access for small companies to innovative approaches and innovative solutions. Again, with regards to open and closed innovation ecosystems, the open typically were envisaged to have orchestrators such as consortia, whereas the closed innovation ecosystems were envisaging to have orchestrators such as contractors or asset owners. And of course, the role of the policymakers was very important for these systems. Implications of the study, again, as mentioned, it's one of the first studies looking at open innovation paradigm in construction. And what we've learned is that these thin project margins in the project-based culture of the sector does not allow for a lot of innovation. So that's why perhaps more collective and open actions are important. And also it says something about recent discussions in the sector about how digital disruptors can take over incumbents. Everyone is expecting a savior from a big tech company. That was in the past what we've seen multiple times, that this does not constitute an evidence of change. There's a lot of discussion still about, oh, Amazon is going to come and take everything, or Google is going to come and take everything. We haven't seen that yet. So it's very interesting to see how this unfolds. Thank you very much for your attendance. Any questions? Happy to discuss.